just seeing him up close myself, he is enormous. He's incredibly fast. He's got a super strong arm. So the raw tools are there. Everybody knows the deal. I mean, Kirk Cousins restructured his contract, and the minute that happened, it created a potential end date for Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. So you have to look into what are the best options.
Welcome into another Purple Insider Extra. Jonathan Harrison here, joined once again by Purple Insiders Matthew Coller. And once again, Coller, we're here to talk about the rumor that just will not go away with the Vikings, and that would be Trey Lance supposedly being on the market once again. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reporting this morning that the 49ers have fielded calls about the former third overall pick, noting that it's not San Francisco making those calls, it's teams making those calls to San Francisco. Now, there's been no specific mention of the Vikings quite yet being one of the teams to make the call. But with Kirk's contract essentially being done next year, the Vikings are obviously in the position of looking for their quarterback of the future. Should the Vikings be making that call and trying to work out a deal before the draft? And what would a deal for Trey Lance look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Vikings should be investigating all potential options, right? I mean, they have talked extensively about looking closely at this draft class. And when Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah did their pre-draft press conference, probably 40-50% of it was just questions about the quarterback and laying out kind of their process. And one of the things that was really notable to me from that was they talked about everybody needing to be on the same page, that was really important. So it isn't just, oh, the front office likes this idea, the coach isn't sure or whatever. Like, they truly do need a consensus on where they're going with the next quarterback. So if their consensus is, hey, we looked at him in the draft a couple years ago, really loved what we saw, and so far there's just been such a small sample size, but we believe in his upside, that would be the reason to do it, because Trey Lance is still a very raw player in the NFL because he doesn't have a lot of experience, didn't even have a lot of experience playing in college, but they saw him up close last year in joint practices against the Vikings, where the two teams, went to battle in practice a couple days in a row. And Jimmy Garoppolo was not a part of those practices, but Trey Lance was. So they were able to see some of his skill set there. And just seeing him up close myself, he is enormous. He's incredibly fast. He's got a super strong arm. So the raw tools are there. And where the Vikings stand right now with their quarterback situation, I mean, what would be an upgrade if you talked about how could you do better than what Kirk Cousins is? And it would be on the physical side, right? Not the mental, not the passing accuracy, but who could run the football for you? Who can make, deep throws into tight windows? Well, he's got the physical tools to do it. And I think we've also gotten to the point where everybody knows the deal. I mean, Kirk Cousins restructured his contract, and the minute that happened, it created a potential end date for Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. So you have to look into what are the best options. So do you like Trey Lance better than Hendon Hooker, better than Will Levis? And let's start talking about the ages of these players that, I think Hendon Hooker is quite a bit older than Trey Lance still, right? Somehow. And I mean, that has to be a factor that when they're evaluating one player versus the next, how could it potentially happen? I mean, maybe that's the 23rd overall pick for Trey Lance, but it depends on who else is calling, what they're willing to give. That's hard for us to know from the outside. And the other wrinkle to this is too, that if Kirk Cousins was involved, it could not happen before the draft. Just the way that Kirk Cousins' contract is structured, they would have to trade him after June 1st. So this could be something that ends up going on later into the summer as opposed to, happening before the draft. So I don't know that it will, but I think that there's just a lot of people putting together the dots, connecting them for the Vikings and Trey Lance. Plus, one of us, right? A Minnesotan. And that always makes a big difference. You lose one Minnesotan, Adam Thielen, you got to have another one come in, right?
I think that's how the trade has to work. Yeah, you lose Adam Thielen, you bring in the Marshall, Minnesota kid. All right, so Pro Football Talks, Michael David Smith tweeted out earlier today, the 49ers view trading up for Trey Lance as a mistake that they'd like to move on from. If the 49ers view the trade up for Lance as a bad idea and seem willing to bet their future on a QB drafted with the last overall pick, should other teams be worried about giving up assets for Trey Lance?
100% yes, absolutely. Now, I mean, one of the problems is that nobody really knows what Trey Lance can be because he just hasn't been on the field almost very much at all. But they have had him in the building, and that's an important thing too. They've seen a lot of practice time of Trey Lance, and if you think you can't figure out a lot of things from practice, well, I mean, you haven't seen it, I guess, because we can usually pick up a lot, and the team can pick up a lot from how a player takes information in, how he's practicing on a daily basis, how his work ethic is. And I'm not saying that Trey Lance has trouble with any of those things in particular, but if a team has seen a guy up close in their building for a couple years and they say, no, this was a mistake, we should have never got this guy, you have to hesitate big time, because we made a lot of excuses for Sam Darnold with the Jets. Oh, well, it's just a bad team. He just needs a better coach, a better team. And then he went to Carolina and he was the same Sam Darnold. With Josh Rosen, same deal, where we said, well, look, they just wanted Kyler Murray and maybe, Josh Rosen could still be so good somewhere else. And he wasn't. In fact, if you try to find examples of first round quarterbacks who busted out with one team and they moved on quickly, and you can't find another one that worked out somewhere else. You can even go back to like a Rick Meyer. I mean, this happens a lot where first round quarterbacks that don't work out do get traded, and it's hard to find examples. The only reason I think this one looks a little bit different is because of how young Trey Lance still is, how inexperienced he is, and that he just had bad luck. But I would absolutely be hesitating just on common sense here that if his team, we've got to believe that the 49ers can evaluate players and quarterbacks pretty well. If his team doesn't think that he can get it, it doesn't think that he can see through the reads and execute an NFL offense, then you have to wonder, well, why would he be able to do it for us instead of them? I mean, Brock Purdy only played a handful of games, right? I mean, he only played 5 or 6 games. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not enough of a sample to really know. And yet the way San Francisco's been talking is as if Brock Purdy is their next franchise quarterback. So I do think that gives you pause. It may go back to how the Vikings and other teams evaluated him coming out, or if they think they could get a steal here. I mean, 23rd overall pick might get it done, but I think if you're the Vikings and a lot of other teams, you're trying to not give up too much for a player, knowing that San Francisco seems want to get rid of him.
That's been another Purple Insider Extra for Bring Me the Sports. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the Purple Insider Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Talk to you next time.